My name's Jackson. I'm 34, and last month my own family tried to write me out of existence, like I was some scratch on their perfect little portrait. It happened at the one place I thought I'd always be safe. Grandma Helen's house. She passed away in February. Quietly. Peacefully. The kind of death people call a blessing when they don't know what else to say. But her passing cracked open something ugly beneath our family. Something we'd all pretended wasn't there. I grew up in that house. Every summer, every Christmas, every birthday. It was the only place where I felt seen. Grandma called me her old soul, said I had a heart too big for a world this small. She was the only one who listened when I struggled with anxiety in my teens. The only one who didn't roll her eyes when I said I didn't want to go to law school like my sister Harper. Harper, the golden child. Harvard-educated, designer heels, perfect hair that somehow never moves. She got everything right on paper, and still had room to make me feel like a loser every time I opened my mouth. After Grandma passed, Harper swooped in like it was her inheritance tour. She handled the lawyer, the will, the logistics, the funeral, the food, everything. I stayed out of the way. I thought it was grief. Turns out it was strategy. 3 weeks later, she invited the whole family over for one last gathering at Grandma's before we finalized things. I showed up with a bottle of Riesling and a quiet ache in my chest. That house still smelled like oatmeal cookies and Vicks VapoRub. I almost cried walking in, but the mood was off. The living room was spotless, staged almost. Every photo of me, gone. Just Harper and her accomplishments lining the mantel. We all sat down in the dining room. It was Harper, her husband Matt, my parents, Uncle Ron, and me. A tight little circle of legacy and tension. Harper stood up and tapped her wine glass with a fork. "So," she began, "we've been reviewing Grandma's affairs, and after much discussion, we've reached a decision as a family." My chest tightened. She continued, "The house will be sold. The proceeds will be divided accordingly, but in the interest of fairness, since Jackson has no mortgage or children, we've decided his portion will be redistributed." I blinked. Redistributed. To who? To us, she said like it was math. To the family. My mother nodded without looking at me. My father sighed but stayed silent. Matt was already opening a folder and sliding it across the table. It was a waiver, releasing my claim to the house. My name was already signed. Except, I hadn't signed it. I looked at Harper. "You forged my signature?" She didn't even flinch. "Don't be dramatic. We just assumed you'd agree. It's what's best for everyone." I looked around the table. No one met my eyes. Not one person stood up for me. I felt something cold crawl up my spine. Not anger. Not yet. Just the realization that I'd been erased long before that dinner. This was just the paperwork. I pushed the waiver back across the table. "I won't sign it," I said. Harper's eyes narrowed. "Jackson, let's not make this hard. You don't even live here anymore." I smiled. Not because anything was funny, but because suddenly I saw it clearly. They thought I was still that quiet, anxious kid who wouldn't fight back. "Before you finalize the sale," I said, standing up slowly, "you might want to check the yard." Harper raised an eyebrow. "What are you talking about?" I leaned in, calm, direct. "You might want to see what Grandma left under the old oak tree before you bulldoze this place to the ground." Silence. Harper's smile faltered for the first time that evening. She laughed nervously. "What? Like a time capsule?" I met her eyes and held them. "Something like that." And then I walked out. The worst part wasn't the forged signature, or the smug look on Harper's face when she tried to feed it to me like it was some kind of mercy. The worst part was watching my parents sit there and say nothing, like they were guests in a crime they had no stake in. I left that night without slamming a door. I didn't scream or throw a fit. I just drove. Through the dark back roads of Austin, windows down, fingers gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. That house wasn't just wood and drywall. It was my childhood. my only safe place. And they were about to sell it for some clean slice of inheritance pie I wasn't invited to share. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying the moment Harper said, "You don't even live here anymore." Like physical absence equals emotional insignificance. But that one sentence, it sparked something. A memory I hadn't touched in years. I was 19, living in the guest room at Grandma's after getting pulled out of college mid-semester. Not because I failed, but because Harper told my parents I was mentally unstable after I confided in her about a panic attack I'd had on campus. She spun it into something dramatic and dangerous, and next thing I knew, my tuition was frozen, and I was back in Texas like a dog with its tail tucked. Grandma didn't believe the story. She never did. That summer, she gave me a task. Dig a hole in the backyard under the old oak tree. Said it was for a time capsule she'd always meant to bury. She handed me a dusty lockbox and said, "Only open this if they ever try to erase you." I thought it was just one of her quirky ideas. I buried it. Concrete and all. Never thought about it again. Until now. I spent the next morning calling every contractor I could find. Most thought I was insane. One hung up on me. Finally, a guy named Glenn called back. He was local, ran a small concrete business. "Wait," he said after I explained. "Is this Jackson?" "Jackson Beckett?" "Yeah. Why?" "I think I helped you pour that slab. Back in 2008, your grandma paid me $50 and a peach cobbler." I laughed for the first time in days. "You serious?" "Dead serious. I remember because I asked if it was a grave and you said, 'Only for the lies.'" I swear I nearly cried. Glenn agreed to meet me at the house the next day. Early morning before the open house Harper had scheduled. I didn't tell her, obviously. Just needed 1 hour. That's all. We pulled up with a rental jackhammer and a wheelbarrow. My heart was thudding like a drum in my chest. I wasn't even sure the box would still be there. Or if it had survived the years. But as soon as we cracked the concrete, I saw the edge of rusted metal peeking through the dirt. It was real. We pried it open with a crowbar. Inside was a single manila folder, wrapped in plastic, dry as bone. And beneath that, a red leather journal. Grandma's handwriting on the first page. "If they've tried to bury you, this is your shovel." The folder had documents. A handwritten will from 2009, leaving the house solely to me. Signed. Witnessed. Notarized by Mrs. Kinney, the neighbor across the street. And stapled to it was a sealed envelope addressed to the real Jackson. I didn't open it. Not yet. Because beneath the folder, tucked between pages of the journal, was something I never expected. A Polaroid. Faded, grainy, but unmistakable. It showed Harper, maybe 17, standing in Grandma's bedroom, holding an envelope that looked a hell of a lot like a will. My stomach flipped. There'd always been a rumor that Grandma rewrote her will after an incident between her and Harper, but nobody knew the details. Now, I was starting to think Harper had known exactly what was buried under that concrete, and she'd counted on me for getting it. She'd counted wrong. The whole drive home, I kept one hand on the steering wheel and one on the manila folder in my passenger seat, like I was guarding a live wire. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It was steady, heavy. The kind of calm you only feel after something inside you breaks so clean it stops hurting. I parked 2 blocks away from my old street, didn't want Harper seeing my car. Her open house was scheduled for noon. I had one shot. I wasn't looking for revenge. Not exactly. I just wanted truth to breathe again. Out in the open, not buried under 2 feet of concrete and years of silence. I slipped into Grandma's house through the side gate. Glenn had already left by then. The slab was clean, backfilled like nothing had happened. But the folder in my hand? It was fire. The front door was wide open. Realtors. Strangers walking around like it already belonged to them. One woman complimented the backsplash. Another pointed at Grandma's old piano like it was some quirky antique instead of the one place I ever felt like I mattered as a kid. And there she was. Harper. standing in the living room in a navy pantsuit, glass of Chardonnay in one hand, fake charm in the other. I waited until the guests cleared. Then I stepped inside. Her eyes landed on me and froze. "Jackson," she said, voice tight. "What are you doing here?" "Just browsing," I said. "Heard the house was up for grabs." "This is private property during showing hours," she snapped. "You need to leave." "I will, after you answer one question." I walked right up to her, took out the Polaroid, held it up between us. Her face drained. She didn't blink, didn't breathe. "Where'd you get that?" she asked, voice suddenly small. "You remember it, don't you?" I said. "That day in Grandma's room. You thought no one saw you, but Grandma did. She had a camera behind the curtain. You knew she changed the will. You knew this day would come." "You're bluffing," she whispered. I opened the folder right in front of her, showed her the original will, showed her the notarization, showed her the witness's name. Harper's hand shot out like she was going to rip it all away, but I stepped back. "I already made copies," I said calmly. 12 of them. Sent to the family, to Grandma's lawyer, to your office's ethics board. Her lip quivered. "You don't get to sell this house," I said. "It was never yours." Then her mask cracked. She hissed. Actually hissed, like something feral. "You ungrateful bastard. She always loved you more." "She did," I said, "because I never tried to erase people to feel worthy." Just then, Matt, her husband, walked in holding 2 cups of coffee. He stopped mid-step. "What's going on?" I turned to him. "You might want to ask your wife about the will and the Polaroid." Matt looked at Harper. "What Polaroid?" She stayed frozen. I added, "Also, you might ask why her name showed up on a different will from 3 months after Grandma's stroke. Same witness, same notary. But the notary died the year before." Matt's mouth parted, but no words came. "You forged it?" he asked, incredulous. Harper finally moved. She dropped her wine glass. It shattered. I walked past the shards like they weren't even there. At the door, I turned one last time. "Oh, and Harper?" I said. "The envelope in the box. Grandma left it for me. Want to guess what's inside?" She didn't speak, just stared. I left her standing there in the ruins of her curated image. Got in my car, hands shaking now, not with fear, with release. But when I opened the envelope later that night, tucked inside the folded paper, wasn't what I expected. It wasn't a letter. It was a receipt. From a hotel in Santa Fe, dated 7 years ago, 2 names on it. One was Harper's. The other was my father's. I sat in my apartment that night, lights off, just staring at the hotel receipt. Harper Beckett, Thomas Beckett. Same last name, same city, same blood. I held the paper like it might catch fire in my hands. I kept rereading the date. 7 years ago. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't some weird coincidence. It was real. My sister and my father. In the same room, at a resort in Santa Fe, for 3 nights. I felt sick, not just queasy, like my ribs were caving in on themselves. My brain kept trying to rationalize it. Maybe they were at a conference? Maybe there's an explanation? But the name of the room package ended that hope fast. Romance suite, couples only. I threw up. Right there, on the floor. It's wild how one truth can rip a hole in every memory you ever thought was solid. Suddenly, the way Mom always looked away when Harper and Dad bickered too long made sense. The way Harper could do anything and still get bailed out. The weird silences during family dinners. The awkward shuffles in the hallway when I came home from college. They weren't just protecting Harper. They were protecting themselves. And Grandma? She must have known, or found out. That's why she changed the will. That's why she warned me. That's why Harper had to forge it. If the truth came out, she wouldn't just lose a house. She'd lose everything. And so would Dad. I didn't sleep. I barely moved. But by morning, something inside me shifted. The nausea faded. The shaking stopped. What replaced it wasn't peace. It was clarity. They built their house of lies on top of me. And now the foundation was cracking. First thing I did was call the notary witness listed on Grandma's forged will, Mrs. Henderson. She was supposedly in Arizona now, according to Harper. But after 2 hours of digging, I found her real address, 10 minutes from my apartment. She answered the door in slippers and curlers. I introduced myself, told her I was Helen Beckett's grandson. She sighed like she'd been waiting for this. "Come in, honey," she said. I figured this day would come. Turns out Harper had begged her to sign a blank notary form, saying she'd fill in the details later. She told Mrs. Henderson it was just some paperwork for a family trust. But the kicker? Mrs. Henderson had kept a copy of everything Harper gave her. It was her insurance, in case that girl ever got slick. I scanned it right there. Then I asked if she'd be willing to testify if it came to that. She didn't even hesitate. That girl tried to play me. I'm too old for games. Next stop? Grandma's lawyer. I didn't ask for a meeting. I showed up with the original will, the photos, the hotel receipt, and now the witness testimony. He looked through it slowly, methodically, then leaned back and said, "Jackson, this isn't just forgery. If what you're implying is true, this is family misconduct with potential civil liability. You sure you're ready for this?" "I'm ready." And then, because pain loves company, I took one last step. I called Mom. Her voice cracked the moment she picked up. "Jackson, sweetheart, are you okay?" I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just said one thing. "I know about Harper and Dad." The silence on the line was so deep I could hear her breathing like wind through a paper bag. Then she whispered, "It wasn't supposed to go on this long." My heart stopped. She knew. She had known for years. She chose silence. She chose them. That was the moment I realized. I'd never had a mother. I'd only ever had an accomplice in cowardice. I hung up. No goodbye. No more explanations. No more bargaining. The days that followed felt like walking through ash. Quiet, gray, and strangely clean. I didn't call anyone. Didn't answer messages. I left the lawyer to handle the fire. Turns out when you forge a will, manipulate a notary, and try to sell property that was never legally yours, people notice. Especially when the original will, a living witness, and a lawyer with a sterling reputation are all stacked against you. Harper got hit first. The ethics committee from her firm launched a formal investigation. She was suspended indefinitely while they reviewed potential fraudulent conduct involving family estate matters. That polished bio of hers, the one that started with Harvard Law, partner by 31, was quietly scrubbed from the firm's website 2 days later. I heard from a cousin that her husband Matt moved out soon after. He took their daughter with him. Apparently, he'd found other receipts, other hotel stays, other names. My father? He never called, never apologized. But I got a letter from his office. Just one sentence typed in cold. "You've made your point." I framed it, hung it in my bathroom, right above the toilet. And my mom, she sent one message. A voice memo. I listened once. "I tried, Jackson. I really did. But some truths, they're too heavy." I deleted it. Because trying isn't the same as choosing. She had 30 years to choose me. She never did. But this isn't a story about losing family. Not really. It's about surviving them. After the will was reinstated, I had legal claim to the house. Every lawyer advised me to sell it. Big profit, clean break. But I didn't. I renovated it. Not into a home, into a refuge. The old living room where Harper humiliated me? Now a free tutoring space for teens who've aged out of foster care. Grandma's kitchen? We turned it into a community kitchen. Open weekends, no ID, no questions. Just food and warmth. We kept the piano. Some nights I sit there and play, and I swear I can still hear her voice humming along. That house doesn't feel haunted anymore. And neither do I. The truth is, justice doesn't always come with handcuffs or headlines. Sometimes it's quieter, sharper, like the sound of a door being locked, for good, on people who never deserved to walk through it in the first place. I didn't burn bridges. I built my own. And I chose who walks across them. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. You don't have to stay loyal to pain just because it feels familiar. Blood might be thicker than water, but sometimes it's the weight pulling you under. If you've ever had to walk away from people who were supposed to love you, just to protect your peace, I hope you know you're not alone. Feel free to share your story in the comments if you want. And if this story hit somewhere real for you, I'd love it if you stuck around for more. Thanks for being here.